May you forever be wild.
This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 275 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. It's titled Kids Are Shaped by Travel. This is a hill I will die on. I think it's so important. But we'll get into more of that in a second. Quick note, I'm recording this podcast on Wadjuk country, and I want to say thank you to the Noongar people who have looked after this amazing part of the world for almost 50,000 years. And let me pay my respects to the traditional owners of the lands wherever you are listening to. So I am a huge believer that travel really shapes kids. I believe it shaped me and influenced my whole life and so many choices I've made and even my personality. And I really think that travel can shape kids' thoughts and beliefs. And it can really change them in a really positive way. Recently, I finally got to travel again with my son. The last time he got on a plane, he was 9, nearly 10, but actually only 9, when we flew back from a week in Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur just before the pandemic started. We came back in late January wearing masks, but really just not really knowing why. So obviously then we got locked into Western Australia for some time and did try to take some trips, just even interstate ones, and failed. So now he is 12 and in high school. And last month we didn't even leave Australia. We just flew to the other side, although that does feel, it takes so long and quite a lot of delays these days. We had not only the regular kind of pandemic-ish delays, but also flooding and bad weather, etc. Anyway, it felt like we were leaving the country, and he was so thrilled. So was I. I was absolutely thrilled. But this episode's about kids, so he was really thrilled, and I was wondering what he'll be like as a traveller now. So, he's 12 and a half, in high school. That's basically a teenager. Sometimes he can be that kind of, teenagers can not really care about their parents as much. And I thought this will be interesting, but he was still thrilled to be travelling, and he is still a massive travel lover. And it was still so good for him, and he did not want to come home. So I think the groundwork of all the travel we did together when he was younger totally shaped how he thinks of travel now. It's shaped how much he gets out of it, and really I think his whole personality. I think he would be quite a different kid if we hadn't done all that travel kind of between 0 and 10. So I firmly believe kids are shaped by travel, and my guests today will concur. So I have carefully selected people who agree with me. No, I have carefully selected people who have interesting things to say about kids and travel. So the first people to chat to today are Carmen and David Allan-Petale. So a married couple. They run their own business. They have 2 young daughters, and they have done masses of travel. So they have a lot to say about this. Now, I interviewed them. I just have to warn you, while I was recovering from COVID, I remember it was the very first thing I did, and I'm a bit hoarse and I'm not as excitable as usual. I feel like I could have been more enthusiastic than when I listen back. I think, that's not like me. But maybe that's a good thing that I was calmer than usual. Who knows? But in any case, here are Carmen and David and their thoughts on how travel shapes kids.
I wasn't there because Carmen took her, but I have this great memory of we were in Adelaide and we were staying at this caravan park just outside the city. And there was an activity day that Carmen took our daughter Ruby to while we were in the caravan. Going around the caravan for 18 months. We ended up in Adelaide. Carmen took Ruby to this activity day where it was like wild play, and a lady painted Ruby's face with mud and stuff, and she was like, "May you forever be wild." I blame her.
She was wild.
It came true.
But then I think
encouraged her.
That was kind of for me, that's the main thing Ruby learned, that the world is open for play, that there's nothing really to be afraid of, that people are cool, and that you should embrace it. She already kind of was doing that, but when she was in the caravan with us, she just had she lived her best life. She had the best time. She has
So how old was she while you guys were on that trip?
We left when she was 18 months and we came back after she turned 3. So it was about 18-month trip around Australia. But I think it's funny because
such a good age.
Yeah, it was great. So she probably is not actually going to remember it, right? Because this is before
that doesn't matter.
Very limited.
But I feel like it has totally imprinted on and shaped her outlook on life. She's super resilient.
Makes friends very quickly.
Makes friends like that. She's extremely adaptable to change and different situations. She's very good at reading people. I think maybe that's the trait she was born with. But
it enhanced it. Yeah.
It's interesting because so many parents are so adamant about teaching their children stranger danger and the world is scary and don't talk to people who you don't know. And I just think that's just such a sad way to live. It's so closed off. And how are they going to learn about different cultures if they don't approach people, if they can't be open to new situations, if they're just so closed off to different cultures and places? I don't know, that saddens me. And even today, some of my friends might say, oh, I told them not to talk to this person because they could be dangerous. What about the fact that most people are like welcoming, lovely, kind?
99.999% of people.
Exactly.
And, you know,
And I think sometimes, like, we obviously all want the best for our children, and these people
of course, but
just are trying to be cautious. But I think, you know, sometimes we send the wrong message, and the world might be a better place if we were more welcoming of other people and just willing to have a chat. I think Australians, in all honesty, are very good at having a chat and doing this. I remember,
and especially in caravan parks, I reckon.
Yes, especially grey nomads. I remember because when I was young, when I was 15, I did a French exchange to Paris for a year. It's an amazing year. But I remember my host mum saying, like, when she came to Australia later to visit me, she was like, people in the shops, like, genuinely ask how I am. I'm like, what the hell? She's like, that is so weird. She's like, in Paris, you go into the shop and people are just disgusted you're there. Like, they're like,
it's the same in Germany. In Germany, they're not disgusted you're there, but you just can't speak to them. So
Aussies are just so friendly, and I think that is definitely something that we're really good at. But yeah, it's great to teach your children that and just to be open to new experiences.
Just on that, I just remembered we were in Hanoi in Vietnam. This is before Ruby was born, and we stayed at an Airbnb in the Hanoi suburbs because we thought, why not? Sounds great. You know, usually you stay in the centre, but we thought we'll go out a little bit and
where the locals are,
and see what's up. And the lady who hosted us had pretty good English, and she said to us one night as we were coming down to go to dinner, she said to me, "Why did you choose to come to my Airbnb? You know, like I usually have people who are coming from the country, or you know, just locals who want somewhere local to stay while they're in town." And I just said all that I just said to you then. You know, we're interested in your culture, and we want to see and meet you and see how people live. And she goes, okay, would you like to come for dinner then? And then she called her son and got her other 2 daughters to come, and we ended up having a meal together and we got photos together. And it was just, it's what we were saying before about, you know, just opening kids up to the world. I always remember that really, it was a beautiful gesture. Travel should not just be about ticking the box and going to somewhere. No. You know, if you go to London, yes, you can go to Trafalgar Square, but the culture you'll find by going to the pub and having a chat with someone. You know, it's not to be found on the
real London.
So I think that's what we tried to show Ruby. You know, loved being in the caravan parks and meeting the grey nomads. They always wanted to be the grandparents. But
I bet.
It's just good to meet people. Like when we went to
and meeting Indigenous Australians, we were really fortunate. We had an amazing opportunity where our friends work in a very, very, very remote community in Central Australia. It's on the border of WA, Northern Territory and South Australia, the tri-state border. It's called Wingalina. It's very, very remote. It's how many hours? About 6-hour drive from Uluru. So you can imagine, like,
through the desert,
in the desert, dirt track all the way there. And they taught in a school there, and obviously it's an Indigenous community, and the Indigenous people, they were so welcoming. Ruby just played with their kids all week.
We were celebrities because of her. It was
that's just
a bit.
Yeah, Ruby was a celebrity. We would be driving around the community and people were like,
"Hey, Ruby!
Ruby! And she'd be like waving out the window, hey! It was great. But they took us out bush and we got to make, we cooked kangaroo tail in a pit and went looking for witchetty grubs with the elders, and it was so great. And I think that was one thing, like I always wanted to do that kind of stuff because we had explored so many different cultures around the world, but we had never explored like our own local culture, and I always thought that was very sad. So we were so fortunate to be given that opportunity because, you know, people pay huge money for those kinds of experiences, you know.
Yeah. And for Ruby to have it as a little kid to, you know, to think that that's quite a normal thing, that's so perfect.
Got this great photo of her like gnawing on this massive kangaroo tail, and she just she thought it was the best food ever. And she's like naked in a nappy and just like
covered in red dirt. And
it's great. She lived her best life. Yeah, she still sometimes talks about it, but I think it's more the memories that we talk about, and she remembers those all looking at photos.
She gets a lot of strength from it, I think.
Built her character.
Yeah, exactly right. Because I think a lot of people will say, I'm not taking my kids on that trip because they won't remember it. But that's, I mean, I always say to that, well, then why do you do anything when your kids are little? Why don't you just put them in an empty room for the first 5 years, you know? Like, I mean,
and why do anything as an adult? I forget half the stuff I do.
Exactly. But like you say, to shape her whole character for that 18 months.
You learn the most in those first 3, I think it's first 3 years of life, is it? Like that is when you learn the most ever. That's when your brains are forming.
Absolutely.
So to take them on these amazing experiences, you're really shaping the way that they're going to be living their life, really, even if they won't remember.
Such special experiences for Carmen and Dave's daughter, and they've got another daughter now, so I did say they have to hit the road again soon so that she has those same experiences or something similar. In any case, definitely life-changing experiences, and doesn't matter that they don't remember it. That's one of my, as you'll keep hearing throughout this episode, massive bugbears about don't take your kids travelling because they won't remember it when they're that young. So not the point. Anyway, my next guest would agree as well. It's Erica Kritikides. She's the General Manager of Global Product at Intrepid Travel, and she has had lots of experiences travelling with her own kids too.
So I have an 8-year-old boy and I have a 4-year-old girl. My 4-year-old girl, unfortunately, is not as well travelled as my son, my 8-year-old, who's been very fortunate to have started his travel at the age of 3 months in Japan. So he's done very well. And I think the last trip we took overseas with him was actually to China in 2019. So that's actually pretty special, thinking about what's happened and the timing of that trip. I think when people think about traveling with kids, they often stop thinking. They just think, too hard. And I just want to encourage anyone out there who's thinking about it to just do it. Don't think too much. Do it. I think there are so many advantages to kids traveling in the world. I think first and foremost, it teaches kids resilience and flexibility. I mean, I think about Aris traveling in China in 2019. He would have been 6 years old at the time. And it was a trip, to be fair, that I wanted to do. I wanted to go to China. I wanted to see the Great Wall of China. So it was about me, but I was also very curious to see how he would respond and react. Intrepid Travel runs family trips. So the trip that we were on, we were actually traveling with 4 other families through China on this 10-day tour. And I think the thing that I really noted when I looked at him having this experience was there are some pretty long train trips in China. There's some pretty interesting food experiences. But I was so impressed with how he just took this whole experience in his stride. And I think that breaking out of his daily routine and sort of having this completely new, refreshed view on life was actually quite transformational for him. It was probably the trip that he's been most aware of his surroundings, and these different people that he's interacting with and meeting. And I think for him too, so much of the the trip, and I don't know if you've found this when you've travelled yourself with your child, but it teaches them a lot about teamwork. So when we travel together, even if it is just with each other, you can't just think about your own needs. You've really always got to be thinking about not only the needs of your child, but they're also thinking about you too. And within our broader group, so with these 4 other families, we really, by the end of the trip, had become something of a team, helping each other on and off trains with our luggage. The kids were sharing toys on the train rides. It was really, really eye-opening to how teamwork's not just about sport. You often think about,
yeah, so
kids
true.
need to learn about teamwork. We've got to put them into a team sport. And I just think travel offers so much by way of teaching kids about how to coordinate with others and achieve a goal, which in this instance was experiencing China and getting to the end of this trip. So I think that's just been a really profound learning for me as I watch him get on the road.
Yeah.
And I think he's taught me as much as I've seen him learn on the road too. My goal when we went to China was to experience the Great Wall. It was something I had always wanted to see, and it didn't disappoint. It truly is incredible. Watching it circle around the landscape, it's hard to get the scale of it from an image, and I did find it immensely impressive. And I've traveled a lot, and it really was incredible. If you ask my son about that trip, he's not going to mention the Great Wall of China once. He won't mention it. What he will tell you about is these fantastic exercise equipment parks that are all over China that have free exercise equipment. And he's going to tell you how they've got the best steppers ever and how he thinks he did a stepper in pretty much, 6 different cities.
I love that.
And so I think the thing I learned watching him was it's so much about the small details. It's just not about the big things. And I loved that. I loved watching him, really get a massive kick out of a glass elevator in one of the hotels we were staying with, which just looked over a very normal streetscape. I mean, it was not a glamorous elevator by a long stretch, but oh my gosh, he just could not believe it. He just thought it was so wonderful, and it made me really appreciate those small things through completely different eyes. It's really lovely thinking back to that trip. I'm looking forward to getting on the road with him again, I must say, just talking about it now.
It's so special. I agree. Yeah. You reminded me when my son was younger. He's 12 now, but he was obsessed with rubbish bins and rubbish trucks, and I could name multiple countries in the world where we have spent time chasing down rubbish trucks.
We have another one in our family where it's supermarkets. We love when we travel going into supermarkets, and the kids inevitably go into the lolly aisle of whatever country we've been in, and we're marveling at the different types of lollies, and then it's all about will we buy them the lollies, which we sometimes capitulate, but
well, it's important to experience these local customs, isn't it? So, and then they discover that in certain country all the lollies are spicy, or all lollies, there's all sorts of cultural differences that play out. I love a supermarket in another country. They are one of my favorite places to check out when I travel. So lots of great thoughts from Erica there on how travel really is shaping our kids. Now, of course, this is all just anecdotal, and my final guest today is literally doing a PhD on what kids learn from travel. So this is a very exciting thing, I think. So my final guest is Eliza Raymond. She's the co-founder of Good Travel, a tour company which focuses on trips with positive impact. And she is spending her 3 years of a PhD diving deeply into exactly this topic, which I think is just fantastic.
I mean, essentially, there's a lot of research that shows that attitudes and habits are formed during childhood, right? And so I think this is a really important question to be asking. And it's really hard often to change some of those attitudes and habits that form in childhood once people move into adolescence and adulthood. And so prejudice is a great example of that, right? A lot of our biases and prejudices form when we're really quite young. And so then trying to shift those as we get older is hard. And so, of course, our hope is that travel would help address some of those concerns and teach our children to be better people and more aware of their place in the world and become global citizens, essentially. I mean, that's the ideal. And I think there's an assumption that is what happens. But I don't think we actually know is what I would argue. I think there's a lot of, individual experiences that parents will tell us about their kids. And for sure, that's important and worth listening to. But I think in terms of the research, there's actually not been any research looking at children's perceptions of how travel has shaped them. So the youngest has been 16-year-olds, but under that, there hasn't really been research which has directly focused on asking children how travel has shaped, their sense of global citizenship, their perceptions of the people they met and that kind of thing. So that is my life for the next 3 years and my
such
passion.
a fabulous topic. Wow.
Yeah. I'm really excited about it. So I'm just about to begin data collection. So I've done my first 3 kind of pilot interviews and I'm specifically focusing on children's perspectives. So, there has been a lot of research with parents looking at their perspectives, which of course is important too. But I think hearing what children have to say is really important.
So what age children will you be talking with?
Ages 10 to 13.
Oh, that's so good. Wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to read all of what you discover about this. It's such a good topic. I mean, I have often said I wish I had, in theory, but not in practicality, I wish I'd had twins and I could have left one at home and taken my other twin travelling the way I've travelled with my son, and then I would be able to tell for sure.
Like a control group.
A little bit unethical, but I've often said it because I'm so sure that his whole personality has been shaped by all the travels we've done, in his, 0 to 10 kind of years. But of course I can't prove it. Maybe he would have been like this anyway. But I just find it such an interesting topic. So
really interesting. And I do think a lot of adults that you talk to, they'll reflect back and they'll talk about experiences in childhood that really shaped who they are. So I think it is, there's definitely evidence there, but there just hasn't been that angle, I guess, of talking specifically to kids about what they think. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what comes from it. And I'm focusing specifically on who they met from the host country when they travelled and how that shaped the perceptions of the host culture and then of their sense of global citizenship. So their respect for difference and diversity and their sense of belonging to a kind of common humanity. So yes, I will report back to you and let you know what I discover.
That just makes me so excited. Do you have an example of a way you think your daughter has been changed by travel?
So she's still very young.
How old is she?
She's 3.5. She travelled a lot in the first kind of year and a half of her life. And who knows, actually, what impact that had. But she spent a lot of time in Fiji and we went to Thailand a couple of times as well and, was completely the hero on all of those trips, the little chubby blondie.
Oh, she's blonde as well, even.
Yeah. And I was he? Yeah. Yeah. And I was working on the trips to Fiji, I was working. And so, she was being looked after a lot by local people. And certainly it was a wonderful experience for me. And really, I nearly moved to Fiji after that experience because just, sitting down in a restaurant and within 2 seconds, someone swooped in and picked up my daughter and taking her off so I can eat my dinner in peace. And just completely different to how my life is here, living in the suburbs and feeling quite alone a lot of the time, with a young baby and that kind of thing. And so, we went to Fiji about, I think, 3 or 4 times in the early years of her life, and every time it was just heaven for both of us. So who knows? I don't think she really remembers it, but I do believe it will have had some impact, and particularly, again, going back to that literature around how we form bias and prejudice and that kind of thing. And a lot of the kind of unconscious biases form when you're a baby, right? There's been a lot of experiments done looking at that. And so I do think, I hope anyway, from that perspective, that it will at some level have helped to be more open-minded.
Well, I really am keen to hear about Eliza's research results in the future. I can't wait, and I will promise to share them with you guys. In fact, I'll definitely share them in my Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers or the LinkedIn group, so don't forget to join us at either of those. Just in Facebook search for Thoughtful Travellers, or for the LinkedIn one, just head to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. So thank you very, very much to all of my guests who helped me convince you further that travel really shapes kids. First up, I chatted with Carmen and David Allan-Petale of Red Platypus Creative. You can find out more about their business at redplatypuscreative.com, and they are also the hosts of the Committed Creative podcast. So if you have a creative career, or even if you don't actually, it's just really interesting. They talk to some really fascinating people. Next, I chatted with Erica Kritikides from Intrepid Travel, and you can find more about their trips at intrepidtravel.com. And last of all, I chatted with Eliza Raymond from Good Travel. You can find out more about her work at good-travel.org. And I'll leave a link in the show notes as well to her research page at her university in case you are curious to find out more about that. So thank you very much as always, and I will be with you again very soon. Thanks everyone for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.